As mediators, we're going to learn how to manage this conflict. It's defined as an actual or perceived opposition of needs, values, and interests. Conflict is actually everywhere, just as these guys. So here's the situation. Oops, not that situation. Our situation.
With bullhorns, American flags, and cardboard signs denouncing Islam, about 24 protesters showed up across the street from the Islamic Center in Temecula just as worshipers were arriving to pray. They're protesting because the Islamic Center wants to build a mosque right here in the city.
So how do we mediate parties from this to this? The answer may seem pretty obvious, but it takes a lot of work in the form of preparation to get disputing parties to resolve their conflicts. And so, our presentation will cover pre-mediation preparation. In specific, we'll discuss what is pre-mediation preparation for, specific factors to consider before meeting with the parties, pre-mediation data gathering formats, and lastly, we'll apply several of the concepts that we've discussed to the conflict in Temecula. So let's begin. Pre-mediation preparation is the initial stage in mediation where a mediator has an opportunity to speak to the parties separately. This initial dialogue should accomplish 4 tasks. The first is establishing rapport and creating a comfortable environment for open communication. With an open environment and strategic questioning, you'll identify the parties' interest and consequently have the information to understand the conflict. Once you have all the data and information needed, you can create a mediation plan. Once the plan is created, you'll be able to explain certain procedures or certain steps in the procedures to the parties. Now that we've discussed what a mediator should accomplish in the preparation stages, let's discuss special factors to consider about conflict in general. One such factor is emotions. It's happened to all of us. We begin a discussion by talking, but with a sudden rush, the argument has converted to a shouting match. Why? Well, our emotions have taken control, and more often than not, these strong emotions can and will have a negative effect. In our text, The Mediation Process, with the author Christopher Moore, he tells us that there are 3 components to emotion. One is a physiological component, the second is a behavioral component, and the third is the cognitive component. They're all important, but the latter 2 is something that we as mediators can have a little more control of. Regardless, let's talk about all 3. So the physiological component involves a natural biological response to emotions like the face flushing red or someone's heartbeat raising as they're getting angry. The second one is the behavioral component, which involves the party's actions like making an angry face or rolling one's eyes or leaving the room at the end of a discussion. The last component is the cognitive component. This is the thinking portion of it. How many times have you argued only to realize that the argument is no longer about the original topic or realize that what you're saying makes absolutely no sense?
That's it. Go comatose for me, baby.
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
To tie it all together, our emotions affect the way we think. And when they affect the way we think, ultimately they will affect our actions and our behaviors.
Nuts! I mean, I understand freaking tolerance. I get tolerant people, but now we're just bending over and taking it from freaking behind. They're gonna build a mosque in ground zero? Are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? What's next? What's next? What's next?
The next factor to consider is culture. Culture is important for conflict. The reason being is that culture affects our perception of others' behaviors, attitude, and communication. If there are cultural differences between the parties, then there could be adverse effects on their trust and ability to communicate. It may be necessary to investigate if mediation will require a culturally focused process. For example, collectivist societies differ in approach than individualistic societies. As Christopher Moore notes in his textbook, in Latin America and the Middle East, the opening of mediation may be accompanied by food or drinks provided for by the mediator. Most communication theorists propose that conflict is the result of poor communication, whether it be in quantity, quality, or form. In fact, the communication skills chosen by the mediator are ultimately the strongest tools in facilitating accurate messages between the parties' dialogues. The following communication tools can assist for data gathering in the pre-mediation phase. One such tool is paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is when a mediator restates what the party says in different words, but keeps the original meaning. By doing this, a mediator can clarify information while showing the party that they are listening carefully. The next tool can be used during emotional dialogue. Moore calls this tool active listening. Active listening is similar to paraphrasing, but includes the element of acknowledging the party's emotions that correlates to that statement. The last tool is probing questions. These are questions like open-ended questions or focus questions that get a party to reveal more information. Now that we've discussed factors in conflict, let's talk about data gathering formats and apply them to the conflict in Temecula. One format is direct observation. For a highly public dispute like the mosque conflict in Temecula, this could include observing a protest or watching a news segment in order to listen to some of the dialogue.
Most of the people involved in the mosques are not the saints they claim they are.
I just don't agree with their beliefs.
Okay. Don't they have freedom of religion, though?
They do have freedom of religion just like we do. But that's not what this is about.
I have witnessed what happens to many nations in the world. By expansion of Islamic ideology, they destroy the community, destroy the country.
A second format is the use of secondary sources such as financial records and documents. In the case of Temecula, sources such as blueprints, public records like the building permit application, or a map of the disputed area can assist in having a better understanding. The last format is the most direct approach and the most important, and that is interviewing. During the interview, a mediator could complete the objectives for preparation. With the communication tools mentioned earlier, a mediator will have accurate information all while acknowledging the party's emotions. With an acknowledgement of their emotions, the mediator has begun building rapport and setting the tone of the entire process. Once the interviews are complete and all the conflict data has been collected, a mediator will use it to interpret the dispute. After the analysis, the mediator should create a detailed mediation plan. The plan will tell us every aspect of the process. It'll tell us who, what, when, and where, whether to use interest-based or position-based negotiations, and it'll tell us the emotional state of the parties. With a good mediation plan and a commitment from the disputing parties, the next step is to assist them through the process in order to reach a resolution.
That the fundamental beliefs of Islam are not as represented by Mahmoud as being generally peaceful and interfaith. The fundamental views are that Islam must become the dominant religion in the world and that all other faiths must be subdued and subjected to it.
People of the faith, of the Abrahamic faith, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, share a lot of grounds on all the principles, from God even to raising our children into being good citizens and so forth.
Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, and Jews got their